My name is Samuel, and at 35, I built a tech empire my family never believed in. Every Father's Day, we gather for dinner at my parents' house, a tradition I both dread and honor. This year, when my father stood up and announced he was proud of all his children except the loser at the table, something inside me snapped. I placed an envelope before him, said, "For you, Dad, Happy Father's Day," and walked out. What happened next shocked everyone, including me. I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to hear how I finally stood up to my father after years of abuse. I grew up in a modest colonial house in suburban Boston, the second of 4 children raised by my father William and mother Grace. From the earliest days I can remember, our family had a clear pecking order, and I was never at the top. My father built a moderately successful construction business from scratch. He started with nothing but a pickup truck and some tools, eventually growing into a regional contractor with 50 employees. This achievement was his identity, his measure of a man, and the standard against which he judged everyone, especially his children. Real success leaves evidence. He would lecture us over dinner. Diplomas on walls, numbers in bank accounts, respect in the community. My older brother Jackson embodied everything my father valued. He excelled in sports, maintained perfect grades, and followed the approved path to medical school. Now at 38, he runs his own dermatology practice that caters to Boston's elite. His perfect life includes a beautiful wife who used to model, 3 photogenic children, and a vacation home in Cape Cod. My younger sister Amanda, now 32, was another source of paternal pride. She graduated top of her class at Boston College Law and landed at a prestigious firm right out of school. Every family gathering featured updates about her latest high-profile case or promotion. Father would listen with shining eyes as she described her courtroom victories. Tyler, my youngest brother at 28, completed the trifecta by becoming a financial analyst for a major investment bank. His natural charm and mathematical mind made him perfect for the role, and Father loved bragging about Tyler's connections to wealthy clients. Then there was me. From childhood, I marched to the beat of a different drum. While my siblings played sports and joined debate clubs, I spent hours dismantling computers and rebuilding them. Technology fascinated me in ways my father could never understand. Computers are for playing games. He would scoff whenever he found me coding. Real men build things you can touch. My mother Grace provided whatever emotional support I received growing up. A former elementary school teacher who gave up her career to raise us, she would secretly encourage my interests when Father wasn't around. "Your mind works differently, Samuel," she would whisper while Father was watching football with my brothers. Different isn't wrong. Someday they'll understand that. But her support always came with limitations. She never openly contradicted my father or defended me during his tirades about my waste of potential. Her survival strategy was to smooth things over, keep peace, and pretend our family was perfect. High school was particularly rough. While Jackson had been football captain and prom king before me, I was the awkward tech kid who started a computer club that only 3 other students joined. My father attended exactly 0 of our club competitions, despite my team winning the state robotics championship. "Call me when you win something that matters," he said when I showed him our trophy. College created the ultimate rift between us. I got accepted to MIT, which briefly made him proud until I dropped out during my sophomore year to pursue a startup idea. The fight that followed still echoes in my nightmares. "No son of mine throws away an education to chase some internet fantasy," he roared, veins bulging in his forehead. "You want to be a failure? Do it without my support." True to his word, he cut me off completely. No help with rent, no health insurance, not even birthday calls. My siblings sided with him, convinced I was making a terrible mistake. Only my mother maintained contact, sending occasional care packages and nervous texts checking if I was eating properly. The next 5 years were brutal. I lived in a cramped apartment with 3 other tech hopefuls, worked odd jobs to fund our startup, and survived primarily on ramen and energy drinks. Through it all, I watched from social media as my family celebrated holidays, vacations, and my siblings' mounting achievements without me. Jackson bought his first luxury car. Amanda made partner at her firm. Tyler closed his first major investment deal. And with each success, my father's Facebook posts grew more effusive about his successful children with pointed omissions of any mention of me. What none of them knew was that our startup was slowly gaining traction. We developed a cybersecurity platform that caught the attention of major investors during year 3. By year 5, we had contracts with government agencies and Fortune 500 companies. Last year, at age 34, I sold a 30% stake in my company for a figure that would have made my father's eyes bulge. Overnight, I went from scraping by to having more wealth than the rest of my family combined. I never flaunted my success. I moved into a nice but modest apartment, upgraded my wardrobe subtly, and started helping others anonymously. When Jackson mentioned struggling with his children's private school tuition during a rare phone call, a mysterious scholarship came through. When Amanda's law firm faced financial trouble, an anonymous investor provided capital. When Tyler mentioned wanting to buy a house but lacking down payment funds, he magically won a contest covering exactly the amount he needed. Most significantly, I anonymously bolstered my parents' retirement account after discovering my father's business had been struggling. Construction contracts dried up during the recession, and at 65, he faced the prospect of working well into his 70s. Despite achieving everything on my own terms, a part of me still craved my father's approval. Like a child showing a drawing to an indifferent parent, I kept seeking validation from the man who had written me off years ago. This need for validation led me to purchase a Mercedes S-Class sedan for my father this year, delivered anonymously 3 days before Father's Day, with a note saying the giver would be revealed at the family dinner. I imagined the moment he would realize his loser son had become more successful than he ever dreamed. Maybe then, finally, I would see pride in his eyes when he looked at me. Our family gatherings had established a predictable pattern over recent years. I would arrive, receive cold acknowledgement from my father, sympathetic glances from my mother, and condescending, "How's the computer thing going?" questions from my siblings. Father would inevitably make a speech praising his children's accomplishments, with minimal or backhanded references to mine. I would smile through it, telling myself next time would be different. But this Father's Day, something inside me warned that I needed a backup plan. Something told me to prepare for disappointment, to arm myself against the familiar pain. That instinct led me to prepare the envelope I would ultimately place on the dinner table before walking away. The week leading up to Father's Day filled me with a familiar cocktail of hope and dread. Despite years of disappointment, some childish part of me still believed this time might be different. Maybe the luxury car would finally make my father see me as successful. Maybe this would be the gathering where I earned my place at the family table. "You know you don't have to go," Jessica said, watching me try on the third button-down shirt that morning. My girlfriend of 2 years understood my family dynamics better than anyone. We met at a tech conference where her marketing firm was representing clients, and unlike my family, she valued my ambition from day one. "If they can't appreciate who you are and what you've built, that's their loss," she continued, straightening my collar with gentle hands. "You have nothing to prove to them." "I know," I sighed, studying my reflection. The man in the mirror barely resembled the awkward kid my family remembered. Proper nutrition and regular gym sessions had transformed my formerly lanky frame. Success had given me confidence that showed in my posture. Only my eyes revealed the lingering insecurity. "But they're still my family." Jessica nodded, but couldn't hide her concern. "Just remember what we talked about. You have permission to leave if it gets toxic. You have permission to stand up for yourself." The night before, I had prepared my contingency plan. In a sealed envelope, I compiled evidence of my success. Bank statements showing my net worth, business valuation documents, press clippings about my company's innovations, and records of the anonymous financial support I'd provided to each family member, including my father. I also made a copy of the Mercedes ownership papers, along with a letter explaining my journey since being cut off. The letter wasn't angry or vindictive. It simply stated facts and expressed my enduring hope for genuine connection with my family, particularly my father. "Do you think you'll need to use this?" Jessica had asked as I sealed the envelope. "I hope not," I replied. But last Father's Day, my mind flashed back to the previous year's dinner. After watching my father lavish praise on my siblings for 20 minutes, he had finally turned to me with a dismissive gesture. "And Samuel here is still playing with his computers," he had chuckled, prompting uncomfortable laughter from everyone except my mother. "Maybe this year he'll finally join the real world and make something of himself." I had smiled through clenched teeth, ignoring the sympathetic glances from Amanda, who at least had the decency to look embarrassed by his behavior. That memory strengthened my resolve to prepare differently this year. The envelope was my shield, my exit strategy if history repeated itself. The morning of Father's Day, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "Looking forward to seeing you, sweetheart. I made your favorite apple pie for dessert." This was her pattern too, acting as though everything were normal, as though my father hadn't spent decades undermining my confidence and dismissing my choices. I texted back a simple, "Looking forward to it too," without mentioning the Mercedes or my backup plan. My siblings all sent their obligatory group text messages about arrival times and who was bringing what side dish. Jackson mentioned he had big news to share, which typically meant another achievement for father to celebrate. Amanda noted she was bringing her new boyfriend, a judge she'd met during a trial. Tyler said he'd be slightly late due to a brunch with clients. None of them mentioned the mysterious luxury car that had appeared in our parents' driveway, though I knew from my mother's earlier calls that it had caused quite a stir. "Your father keeps checking the windows to see if anyone suspicious is walking by," she had reported with a touch of excitement in her voice. "He's convinced it's from one of his former clients who struck it rich." The irony wasn't lost on me. The son he considered a failure had provided the gift he attributed to someone successful. I spent the morning reviewing my company's latest analytics with Jessica, who insisted on keeping me distracted until it was time to leave. My business had recently expanded into artificial intelligence security applications, and our newest product was generating significant interest from international clients. "You should be celebrating these wins," Jessica said, pointing to our growth charts. "Not subjecting yourself to people who can't see your value." "Maybe someday we'll celebrate without the family drama," I replied, checking my watch. "But today, I need to do this. For me, not for them." The drive to my parents' suburban home took 45 minutes, each mile increasing the tension in my shoulders. I parked my Tesla 2 blocks away, not wanting to overshadow the Mercedes surprise. As I walked toward the pristine Colonial with its perfect lawn and American flag fluttering by the door, I rehearsed potential scenarios in my mind. Best case. Father acknowledges the car gift with genuine gratitude, finally sees my success as valid, and our relationship begins healing. Worst case. Nothing changes. The cycle of disappointment continues. And I finally accept that approval from this man might never come. The Mercedes gleamed in the driveway, surrounded by my siblings' vehicles, Jackson's Range Rover, Amanda's Audi, and the empty space where Tyler's BMW would soon park. My mother had texted that morning that my father had already taken the Mercedes for a spin around the neighborhood, proudly showing it off to neighbors while still speculating about its mysterious donor. I paused at the front walkway, envelope tucked securely inside my jacket pocket, heart pounding with a familiar mix of anticipation and anxiety. Through the bay window, I could see Jackson gesturing animatedly while my father nodded with obvious approval. Amanda stood nearby with a tall man in a blazer, presumably the judge boyfriend. My mother bustled between the living room and kitchen, ever the perfect hostess. They looked like a picture-perfect family, one I had always existed slightly outside of, viewing them through an invisible barrier I could never quite break through. Taking a deep breath, I pressed the doorbell and plastered on the smile I'd perfected through years of family gatherings, the one that hid all traces of hurt beneath a veneer of casual confidence. The door swung open to reveal my mother, apron dusted with flour, eyes bright with genuine pleasure at seeing me. "Samuel," she exclaimed, pulling me into a vanilla-scented hug. "You're just in time. Everyone's here except Tyler." As I stepped into my childhood home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this Father's Day would be different from all the others, though not in the way I had hoped when I purchased the Mercedes. Something in the air felt charged, like the stillness before a storm. Whatever happened in the next few hours would permanently alter the course of our family's history. And the weight of the envelope in my pocket reminded me that, this time, I came prepared. The familiar scent of my mother's pot roast filled the house, mingling with the cinnamon apple pie cooling on the sideboard. Our family dining room had been transformed for the occasion with the good china, crystal glasses, and linen napkins, reserved for special gatherings. Fresh flowers arranged in my grandmother's antique vase served as the centerpiece, surrounded by flickering candles that created a warm, inviting atmosphere that contradicted the emotional undercurrents. "Look who finally made it," my father announced as I entered the living room. William Caldwell stood by the fireplace, one hand clutching a tumbler of whiskey, the other resting on the mantel beside framed photos of family milestones, most of which hadn't included me. At 65, he remained an imposing figure, his 6-foot frame still straight despite his age, silver hair perfectly combed, his golf tan giving him a perpetually healthy glow. "Happy Father's Day, Dad," I said, extending my hand for the formal handshake that had replaced hugs sometime during my teenage years. He accepted my handshake with a firm grip and perfunctory smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Nice of you to join us. Your brother was just telling us about his new medical center expansion." "Of course he was." Jackson stood nearby, beaming with the easy confidence of the perpetually praised. "Samuel, good to see you, bro." His handshake was accompanied by a backslap that seemed designed to emphasize our physical differences. Despite my recent fitness improvements, Jackson still maintained the build of the former athlete, a fact he never failed to highlight through casual physical contact. "Congratulations on the expansion," I offered genuinely. Whatever our differences, I never resented my siblings for our father's favoritism. They had simply followed the paths that aligned with his values. "Thanks. We're adding a cosmetic surgery wing. The profits margins are incredible," Jackson replied, seamlessly merging medicine and business in a way our father always approved of. Amanda approached with her new boyfriend in tow. "Samuel, this is James. He's a federal judge for the district court." The introduction came with the unspoken subtext. He's successful in ways father approves of. "James, my brother Samuel works in computers. Tech entrepreneurship, actually," I corrected gently. "My cybersecurity firm just closed our Series C funding round last month." "Impressive," James nodded, though his tone suggested he was merely being polite. "Is that like making websites and such?" Before I could explain that my company developed advanced security protocols that protected critical infrastructure from international threats, my father interjected. "Samuel always had his head in the clouds with computer games. The rest of the family took more practical paths." He delivered this with a chuckle meant to sound affectionate to outsiders while I recognized the familiar dismissal. "Speaking of practical," my mother interjected, "ever the peacekeeper, dinner is ready, and we should eat before everything gets cold. Tyler just texted he'll be here in 10 minutes, but we can start without him." We migrated to the dining room, taking our usual seats. Father at the head of the table, mother at the opposite end, siblings and guests filling in between. I found myself seated directly across from my father, a positioning that felt symbolic given what the evening would bring. My mother had outdone herself with the meal. Alongside the pot roast came roasted potatoes, glazed carrots, fresh rolls, and a garden salad with vegetables from her own backyard. Wine glasses were filled with an expensive Cabernet, likely chosen by Amanda, who had recently developed an interest in wine collecting. "Before we begin," my father announced, raising his glass, "I want to acknowledge a mysterious gift that appeared in our driveway. Someone left a brand new Mercedes without revealing their identity." He looked around the table with narrowed eyes. I thought perhaps one of my children might shed some light on this generous present. All eyes turned to Jackson, the obvious suspect given his income, but he shook his head. Not my doing, Dad, though I wish I'd thought of it. Amanda and James exchanged glances before she too denied responsibility. Too rich for my blood, even with the partnership. I remained silent, sipping my wine, waiting for the right moment. This gift reveal needed to come after he'd had time to fully appreciate the car, not before he'd even finished his first helping of pot roast. Well, whoever it was, they certainly have excellent taste, my father continued, clearly pleased with the mystery and attention. I've already taken it for a spin. Drives like a dream. Maybe it was one of your grateful clients, my mother suggested, serving the pot roast. You've helped so many people over the years with their construction needs. My father nodded, accepting this explanation easily. Possibly. I did build homes for several tech executives who probably did well in the market. The irony was almost painful. He'd dismiss my tech career while happily attributing his luxury gift to tech industry success, as long as it wasn't associated with me. Conversation flowed around typical family topics as we ate. Jackson described his children's private school achievements. Amanda detailed her latest courtroom victory. My mother asked appropriate questions and offered praise. My father beamed with each new revelation of success from his favored children. When the front door opened announcing Tyler's arrival, Father perked up noticeably. My youngest brother entered the dining room with his characteristic energy, apologizing for his tardiness while kissing our mother's cheek. Sorry, everyone. Client meeting ran long. We're closing a major investment deal next week. Tyler slid into his seat and immediately reached for the wine. No need to apologize for success, son, my father said warmly. We were just discussing the mysterious Mercedes in the driveway. Tyler's eyebrows shot up as he looked around the table. Seriously? Someone gifted you a Mercedes? That's wild. My father launched into a detailed description of the car's features, his voice animated in a way it rarely was when discussing anything related to me. I used his distraction to check my phone under the table, finding a text from Jessica. Everything okay? Remember, your worth doesn't depend on their validation. I texted back a quick, so far, so tense, before returning my attention to the table, where conversation had somehow shifted to my sister's boyfriend's recent judicial appointment. The governor personally called me, James was explaining, clearly enjoying being the center of attention. Said my record of decisions showed exactly the kind of jurisprudence they value on the bench. Remarkable achievement at your age. My father nodded approvingly. You must be very proud, Amanda, to have found someone so accomplished. Amanda beamed, squeezing James's hand. We actually met when I argued a case in his courtroom. And she won, James added with practiced humility. Thoroughly outmaneuvered my previous ruling framework. My father turned to me suddenly, as though remembering I was present. Samuel, anything new with your computer business? The opening I'd been waiting for. Actually, yes. We recently developed security protocols that 3 government agencies have adopted. Our company valuation hit 9 figures last month. A brief silence followed as the information registered. My father's expression flickered between disbelief and confusion. 9 figures? You mean like $100 million? Tyler blurted. Wine glass halted midway to his mouth. 127 million at the last valuation. Yes, I replied calmly, taking another bite of pot roast. My father recovered quickly. Well, these tech valuations are always exaggerated. All theoretical money, until someone actually buys the company, right? And there it was. The immediate dismissal. The refusal to acknowledge achievement that didn't fit his narrow definition of success. We had multiple acquisition offers, I continued, maintaining my composure. I declined them to maintain control of our technology development. Smart move, James commented, seeming genuinely interested for the first time. Retention of intellectual property rights in tech acquisitions is becoming a major judicial consideration. My father frowned slightly, displeased that James had validated my business acumen. Well, I suppose playing with computers turned out better than expected. Though a stable profession with community standing still builds more meaningful success in the long run. Jackson jumped in, clearly trying to recenter attention. Speaking of success, Lisa and I have some exciting news. We're breaking ground on a vacation home in Aspen next month. Now the kids can learn to ski at a proper resort." My father's face lit up immediately. "Now that's fantastic news. Real estate is always the smartest investment. Something tangible you can pass down to your children." As dessert was served, my mother's apple pie with vanilla ice cream, the conversation continued to orbit around my siblings' achievements, while my earlier business revelation was forgotten. I watched my father's animated interactions with Jackson and Amanda, his proud glances at Tyler, the complete engagement he showed in their lives contrasted with the dismissive distraction he offered me. The envelope felt heavier in my pocket with each passing minute. The Mercedes sitting in the driveway, still unacknowledged as my gift, seemed to mock my continued hope for recognition. When my mother began clearing dessert plates, my father stood, tapping his glass with a spoon. "Before we finish our celebration, I want to say a few words about my children, as is our tradition." The annual speech had arrived. I subtly touched the envelope through my jacket, mentally preparing myself for whatever came next. My father cleared his throat dramatically, surveying his audience with the satisfaction of a man who believed he had accomplished everything worthwhile in life. The dining room fell silent, as everyone waited for his traditional Father's Day address. Mother returned from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, and took her seat with an encouraging smile toward him. "Another year has passed," he began, raising his refreshed glass of whiskey, "and I find myself once again blessed beyond measure by the family surrounding this table." He turned first toward Jackson, his expression warming noticeably. "My firstborn continues to make his mark on the medical community. Jackson, your new medical center expansion represents everything I've always valued: ambition, community service, and creating a legacy that will outlast us all. The Caldwell name has gained prestige through your work." Jackson nodded appreciatively, his arm around his wife's shoulders. "Amanda," my father continued, shifting his gaze, "your legal mind continues to impress everyone who encounters it. Making partner at 32 puts you among the youngest in your firm's history. And now," he gestured toward James, "you've found a partner whose accomplishments match your own, a federal judge, no less." Amanda beamed while James nodded with practiced humility. "And Tyler," father's voice softened with unmistakable affection for his youngest, already making waves in the financial world at 28. "Your recent promotion came as no surprise to those of us who have watched your natural talents develop since childhood." The pattern was familiar, the praise effusive and specific. Each sibling received a detailed acknowledgement of their year's accomplishments, their value to the family name, their fulfillment of his expectations. Then his gaze landed on me. The slight tightening around his eyes was barely perceptible to others, but glaringly obvious to me after years of witnessing the same micro-expression. "As I stand here on Father's Day," he continued, his tone shifting subtly, "I can honestly say I'm deeply proud of all my children." He paused, his eyes scanning the room before returning to me with unmistakable disappointment. "Except for the loser sitting at this table." The room fell silent. Jackson's wife gasped softly. Amanda stared at her plate. Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his chair. My mother's face drained of color. "Dad!" Amanda finally broke the silence, her voice sharp with shock. But my father wasn't finished. Let's be honest. 3 of my children followed the path to real, respectable success. One chose to waste his potential on internet schemes and digital fantasies. The words struck with precision, targeting the exact insecurities he had cultivated in me since childhood. Under different circumstances, I might have shrunk into myself, accepted the familiar role of family disappointment, and let the moment pass to preserve the illusion of harmony. But something had changed in me. Perhaps it was the culmination of years of dismissal. Perhaps it was the stark contrast between my actual success and his persistent refusal to acknowledge it. Or perhaps it was simply that I had finally, truly outgrown the need for his approval. I felt a strange calm settle over me as I reached into my jacket and withdrew the sealed envelope I had prepared. Without speaking, I stood from my chair, my movement drawing all eyes away from my father's smug expression. "Samuel," my mother began, her voice tinged with worry, I approached my father, who watched with narrowed eyes, and placed the envelope directly in front of him on the table. Our gazes locked, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't look away first. "For you, Dad. Happy Father's Day." My voice remained steady, devoid of the anger or hurt he might have expected. Without waiting for his response, I turned and walked calmly from the dining room, through the living room, and out the front door. Behind me, I heard confused murmurs, and my mother calling my name, but I didn't turn back. The evening air felt cool against my flushed face as I descended the porch steps. The Mercedes gleamed under the security lights, its silver paint reflecting the deepening twilight. I removed the spare key fob from my pocket, the one I had kept when arranging the delivery. Inside my Tesla parked down the street, I had left the original gift card that had accompanied the Mercedes. It read simply, "To show that success comes in many forms, from your son, Samuel." But that card would never be delivered now. Instead, I pressed the unlock button on the key fob and heard the Mercedes chirp in response. As I opened the driver's side door, the front door of the house burst open, and my father emerged, his face flushed with confusion and anger. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, striding down the walkway with my siblings trailing behind him. Taking back my gift, I replied simply, sliding into the driver's seat. "Your gift? You're saying you bought this car?" Disbelief colored his tone. I did. I started the engine, which purred to life with German precision. But gifts should go to people who value the giver as much as what's given. His expression shifted rapidly between shock, disbelief, and the dawning realization that the son he had just publicly humiliated was indeed the mysterious benefactor. Before he could respond, I closed the door and put the car in reverse. "Samuel, wait!" My mother's voice called out, but I was already backing out of the driveway. As I shifted into drive, I caught a final glimpse of my family through the rear-view mirror. My father frozen in place, my mother's hand covering her mouth, my siblings staring in disbelief. For the first time in my memory, I was the one walking away from them, instead of being left behind. My phone began buzzing immediately as I drove away, notifications flooding in from family members. I silenced it without looking and focused on the road ahead. My hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel, adrenaline coursing through my system as the full impact of what I'd done began to register. I hadn't just taken back a car. I had shattered the dynamic that had defined our family for decades. After driving for about 20 minutes, I pulled into an empty church parking lot to collect myself. The evening had grown dark, and the parking lot lights cast long shadows across the asphalt. I sat in the idling Mercedes, my father's dream car now reclaimed, and finally allowed myself to process the emotions I had suppressed during dinner. My phone continued to light up with messages and missed calls. I finally checked the screen to find texts from everyone at the table. "Mom. Samuel, please come back. Your father is upset, but we can talk about this. Jackson." What the hell was that about? Dad is furious. What was in that envelope? Amanda. That was both awful and amazing. Are you okay? Dad is beside himself. Tyler. Bro, did you seriously buy Dad a Mercedes and then take it back? That's hardcore. What's going on? And most tellingly, nothing from my father. As I contemplated my next move, Jessica called. I answered immediately, her voice a lifeline to reality, outside the toxic family bubble. "How did it go?" she asked, concern evident in her tone. I laughed, a sound tinged with both bitterness and liberation. "Well, I'm currently sitting in a church parking lot in the Mercedes. I bought my father, and then repossessed after he called me a loser in front of the entire family. Oh, Samuel." Her voice softened. "He didn't. He absolutely did. Called me the loser of the family right after praising everyone else in detail. And the envelope? Left it on the table before I walked out. They're probably going through it right now." I leaned back against the headrest, suddenly exhausted. I didn't plan to take the car back. That was a spontaneous decision. "Where are you heading now?" Jessica asked. "I'm not sure," I admitted. I can't face going back there tonight, that's for certain. Come home, she said simply. Or I can meet you somewhere if you need company. I think I need some time alone first, I replied. I'll check into the Marriott downtown and text you the room number. After ending the call, I sat in silence for several more minutes, watching the notifications continue to light up my phone screen. The reality of what had transpired settled over me in waves. For the first time in my life, I had refused to accept my father's judgment. I had walked away, rather than absorb his criticism. I had valued myself more than his approval. It felt terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I started the Mercedes again and headed toward downtown Boston, the luxury vehicle carrying me away from decades of emotional baggage. Whatever happened when my father opened that envelope would forever change our family dynamic. I had finally shown him exactly who I was and what I had accomplished, and I had done it on my own terms. The question now was whether he would finally see me, or whether this would be the final break in an already fractured relationship. Only time would tell. But for the first time since childhood, I found myself unconcerned with the answer. My worth was no longer tied to his perception of me. And that realization alone felt like the most valuable Father's Day gift I could have given myself. The Marriott lobby welcomed me with bland corporate comfort, a stark contrast to the emotional battlefield I'd left behind. The front desk clerk processed my check-in with professional efficiency, not commenting on my lack of luggage or the luxury car key I placed on the counter while retrieving my credit card. "Just one night, Mr. Caldwell?" she asked, typing my information. "Possibly more." "I'll let you know tomorrow," I replied, unsure of my next steps in this uncharted territory. The suite on the 18th floor offered panoramic views of Boston's skyline, the city lights twinkling against the night sky. I stood at the window for several minutes, phone still buzzing periodically in my pocket, trying to imagine what was happening back at my parents' house. I pictured them gathered around the dining table, the envelope now open, my father's face as he processed its contents. The thought brought neither satisfaction nor anxiety, just a strange emotional detachment, as though I were envisioning a scene from someone else's life. Finally, I checked my messages. 37 texts and 12 missed calls, most from family, some from Jessica. I started with hers. "Let me know when you're settled. Here if you need anything." I responded with my room number and a brief "I'm okay. We'll call soon." Then I forced myself to check the family messages, starting with my mother's. 7:42 p.m. "Samuel, please come back. We can talk about this." 7:55 p.m. "Your father is in shock." "What is all this in the envelope?" 8:10 p.m. "Is this real? The bank statements? The company valuation?" 8:24 p.m. "Samuel, please call me." I had no idea about any of this. 8:40 p.m. "Your father needs his heart medication. The stress. Please call." The last message sent a jolt of concern through me. I immediately called her, my thumb hovering over the green button before pressing it with resolve. She answered on the first ring. "Samuel? Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Mom. Is Dad really having heart problems?" A pause. "He took his medication. The doctor said to call if the symptoms worsen." Her voice sounded tired, older than her 63 years. "He's been sitting in his study since he opened your envelope." "I see." I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, unsure what to say next. "Samuel, is it all true?" she asked quietly. "The company valuation? The anonymous donations to the family?" "Every word," I confirmed. "The college funds for Jackson's children? Amanda's law firm investment? Tyler's house down payment?" Her voice trembled slightly. "Our retirement account? All me." A soft sob came through the phone. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Tell me? Would it have mattered to him?" I asked. The question that had haunted me for years. Would success on my terms ever have been enough for Dad? "I don't know," she admitted, and her honesty was both painful and refreshing. "He's very set in his ways about what success should look like." I noticed. "Where are you now?" "At a hotel downtown." I needed some space. "And the car?" I took it back. It was my gift to give, and I chose to ungive it. Another pause, longer this time. He's asked to speak with you. Not tonight, but when you're ready. I hadn't expected that. Really? The envelope. It affected him deeply. I've never seen him like this. I wasn't ready to feel hope again. Not so soon after cutting myself free. I'll think about it. After promising to stay in touch, I ended the call and immediately checked messages from my siblings. They ranged from Jackson's initial outrage, "What the hell was that about?" to confusion, as they presumably examined the envelope's contents, to eventual messages of shocked realization. Jackson, 9:15 p.m. Samuel, we need to talk. The scholarship fund for my kids was from you? Why didn't you say something? Amanda, 9:22 p.m. I can't believe you were the anonymous investor who saved the firm. That was $3 million, Samuel. $3 million. Call me. Tyler, 9:30 p.m. Dude, the contest for my house down payment? That was you? I don't know whether to thank you or be pissed you didn't tell me. Call me when you can. I set the phone aside without responding. Their messages confirmed they'd seen the evidence of my success and my secret support of their lives, but none acknowledged the reason for my dramatic exit. None mentioned our father's humiliating statement or decades of dismissal. Typical. Jessica arrived an hour later with an overnight bag containing fresh clothes and toiletries. Her presence grounded me as the adrenaline of the evening finally wore off, leaving me emotionally exhausted. "Talk to me," she said simply, sitting beside me on the bed after ordering room service. The whole story. I recounted the evening in detail, from the awkward greetings to the devastating speech to my quiet exit and car reclamation. Jessica listened without interruption, her hand steady in mine, her presence a reminder that someone in my life truly saw and valued me. "I'm proud of you," she said when I finished. "Not for the success or the money, but for finally standing up for yourself. That took incredible courage." "It doesn't feel like courage," I admitted. "It feels like I finally reached my breaking point. Sometimes that's what courage looks like." She squeezed my hand. "What happens now?" "I don't know." I stared out at the city lights. Part of me wants to cut ties completely. Another part still hopes for. I don't know. Recognition? Acknowledgement? Some sign that he sees me as a valid human being with my own path. "Whatever you decide, I'm here," Jessica promised. "But remember, you don't owe them anything, not even another chance." Sleep came fitfully that night despite the luxurious hotel bed. Morning brought no messages from my father, though my mother texted that he'd had a restless night and seemed different at breakfast. I threw myself into work over the next few days, taking the hotel as a temporary base while avoiding direct contact with my family. Jessica stayed with me when her schedule allowed, providing emotional support while respecting my need to process the situation in my own way. My company continued to thrive despite my personal turmoil. We finalized a major government contract that Wednesday, our stock value increased by 12%, and a prominent tech magazine requested an interview about our innovative security protocols. Life moved forward professionally, even as my personal life remained in limbo. On Thursday evening, 4 days after the Father's Day disaster, my youngest brother Tyler appeared at my office unannounced. "Your assistant wasn't sure whether to let me in," he said, looking around my corner office with newfound respect. "Nice place." "Thanks." I leaned back in my chair, unsure of his purpose. "What brings you here?" Tyler shifted uncomfortably, looking suddenly younger than his 28 years. "I wanted to see it for myself. The company, your success." He gestured at the office. "It's impressive, Samuel. Really impressive. Would Dad agree?" I couldn't help asking. Tyler winced. "That's partly why I'm here. Dad's not doing great." Concern flashed through me despite everything. His heart, his pride, mainly. Tyler sank into a chair opposite my desk. The envelope destroyed something in him. His whole worldview, maybe. Finding out his failure son is actually the most successful, that you've been secretly supporting all of us, including him. It's broken something fundamental in how he sees himself and his life. I didn't intend to break him, I said truthfully. I just wanted him to see me. Really see me. He sees you now, Tyler confirmed. He can't talk about anything else. Keeps going through those documents like he's studying for an exam, asking me to explain tech valuations and venture capital terms. And what do you think about all this? I asked, curious about my youngest sibling's perspective. Tyler ran a hand through his hair, a gesture reminiscent of our father. Honestly? I'm embarrassed. We've been condescending to you for years while you were quietly building something extraordinary, and then supporting us financially without taking credit. He met my eyes directly. Why did you help us secretly? You could have lorded it over us, especially Dad. That's not who I am, I replied simply. I didn't help for recognition, or to prove a point. I helped because I could, because you're family. Even after how we treated you? Even then. Tyler nodded slowly. Dad wants to meet with you. Just the two of you. He's too proud to call himself, so I'm his messenger. I considered the request, weighing my readiness for such a confrontation. When and where? Whenever and wherever you're comfortable. But soon. He's. I've never seen him like this, Samuel. It's like his entire identity is collapsing. After Tyler left, I called Jessica to discuss the development. Her advice was characteristically balanced. If you decide to meet him, do it on your terms, she emphasized. Neutral territory, time limits, and clear boundaries about what you will and won't discuss. By Friday morning, I had made my decision. I texted my father directly, suggesting Saturday lunch at Davios, an upscale restaurant downtown where the public setting would help contain any potential emotional outbursts. His response came almost immediately. I'll be there. Thank you. Those 4 words, particularly the last 2, gave me pause. In 35 years, I could count on one hand the number of times William Caldwell had thanked me for anything. Perhaps Tyler was right. Perhaps something fundamental had shifted. Only the meeting would tell. Davios restaurant hummed with Saturday lunch patrons, the clink of silverware and murmur of conversations creating a soothing background noise. I arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a corner table that offered privacy while remaining in public view. The hostess recognized me, one benefit of my company's growing profile in Boston's business community. Your guest has arrived, Mr. Caldwell, she informed me just before 1 o'clock, gesturing toward the entrance. My father stood in the doorway, scanning the restaurant with uncharacteristic hesitancy. The confident man who dominated every room had been replaced by someone who seemed smaller somehow, less certain. He wore his usual business casual attire, a button-down shirt and pressed slacks, but his shoulders lacked their usual squared posture. When he spotted me, a complex emotion crossed his face, something between recognition and apprehension. I stood as he approached, extending my hand automatically, falling back on the formal greeting that had defined our relationship for decades. He took my hand but then surprised me by pulling me into an awkward, stiff hug. The gesture felt foreign, his cologne and the scratch of his starched shirt against my cheek momentarily transporting me back to rare childhood moments of physical affection. Thank you for agreeing to meet, he said, releasing me and taking his seat. Thank you for coming. I signaled the waitress, who appeared with menus and water. We ordered drinks, my father requesting his usual scotch, while I chose sparkling water. An uncomfortable silence settled between us as we studied the menus with unnecessary intensity. The steak here is excellent, I offered, attempting to ease the tension. Samuel. My father set down his menu, his hands visibly trembling. I didn't come to discuss food. I nodded, closing my menu as well. I know. The waitress returned with our drinks and took our orders, my father barely glancing at the menu before requesting the salmon. I opted for the steak, buying a few more moments before the inevitable confrontation. When we were alone again, my father took a long sip of his scotch before meeting my eyes directly. I owe you an apology. The words hung between us, unprecedented in our relationship. I remained silent, allowing him the space to continue rather than rushing to ease his discomfort as I might have done before. "What I said at dinner was unforgivable," he continued. "It was cruel, false, and I'm deeply ashamed." "It wasn't just what you said at dinner," I replied calmly. "It was 20 years of the same message delivered in different ways." He flinched but nodded. "You're right. I've been unfair to you since you chose a path I didn't understand or value. That's on me, not you." "Why?" I asked the question that had haunted me for years. "Why was my choice so threatening to you?" My father stared into his scotch, the ice cubes clinking as he rotated the glass slowly. I think because it challenged everything I believed about success and worth." He looked up, his eyes revealing an unexpected vulnerability. My father worked in a factory his entire life, manual labor, coming home with calloused hands and aching back. He measured a man's worth by physical output, tangible results. This glimpse into my grandfather's influence was new information. He rarely spoke about his own upbringing. When I started my construction company, I was following that same tangible path. Buildings you could touch, see, show off to others. I understood that world. When Jackson chose medicine, Amanda law, and Tyler finance, I could still grasp what they were building. But not technology, I supplied. It seemed insubstantial, theoretical. I couldn't see or touch what you were creating. He shook his head. That was my limitation, my failure of imagination. Our food arrived, temporarily pausing the conversation. When the waitress departed, my father continued, leaving his salmon untouched. "The documents you left," he said quietly. "I've read them dozens of times. The numbers. They're staggering. Samuel, what you've built in silence while I was dismissing your work. 127 million at the last valuation," I confirmed. "With government contracts secured for the next 5 years." He nodded slowly. "And the anonymous donations to the family. That was the hardest part to accept. While I was treating you like a disappointment, you were quietly supporting all of us. I didn't do it for gratitude," I clarified. "I did it because I could. Because despite everything, you're still my family. That makes it worse, don't you see?" His voice cracked slightly. "Your generosity highlights my failure as a father, as a man." I cut a piece of steak, considering my response carefully. "I didn't intend to humiliate you with those documents. I prepared them as a shield, protection against exactly what happened at dinner. I needed you to see me clearly, maybe for the first time." "I see you now," he said, the simple statement carrying profound weight. "And I see myself too, with all my flaws and prejudices." He hesitated before continuing. "I also need to tell you something I haven't shared with the family yet. My company is struggling, has been for years." This confirmation of what I'd suspected prompted me to nod. The construction industry took hits during the recession that some firms never recovered from. "We're 3 months from bankruptcy," he admitted, shame evident in his hunched shoulders. "I've been too proud to tell anyone, trying to solve it myself. The retirement account you bolstered. It was nearly empty before your contribution. Your mother doesn't know how close we are to losing everything." The confession explained much about his behavior in recent years, his increasingly desperate emphasis on traditional success, his resentment of my unconventional path. "I can help," I offered simply. "I can't accept charity from my son," he replied immediately, old pride flaring briefly. "Not charity. A business partnership." I leaned forward, switching naturally into the mode I used for business negotiations. "Your construction experience combined with my technology and capital. Smart buildings are the future, integrating advanced security and automation systems into new construction from the ground up." He looked skeptical but interested. "You'd want to partner with me? After everything?" "Professionally, your construction knowledge is valuable. Personally." I paused, organizing my thoughts. "Personally, we have work to do before I can fully trust you again." The partnership would have conditions. What conditions? Family therapy, for starters. Real conversations about the dynamics that have damaged our relationships. I maintained steady eye contact, something that would have intimidated me in the past. And respect, non-negotiable, complete respect for my path and choices, just as I respect yours. He seemed to weigh my words carefully before nodding. That's fair, more than fair. And one more thing, I added. Complete honesty with the family about your financial situation. No more pretending everything's perfect when it's falling apart. This condition clearly made him uncomfortable, but after a moment's consideration, he nodded again. You're right. The secrets have done enough damage. We spent the next hour discussing potential business collaboration. My father gradually relaxing as we moved into practical territory he understood. His expertise in construction materials and processes complemented my knowledge of integrated technology systems. For the first time in my adult life, we conversed as equals, each bringing valuable perspective to the table. When the check arrived, he reached for it automatically, then hesitated, a lifetime habit conflicting with our new reality. Let me, I said, taking the leather folder. Next time can be your turn. The phrase next time hung between us, an acknowledgement that this conversation represented a beginning rather than an end. As we walked out of the restaurant together, my father paused before we reached the valet stand. The Mercedes, he said suddenly. I understand why you took it back. It wasn't about the car, I explained. It was about being valued as the giver, not just for the gift. I understand that now. He looked at his shoes, then back at me. When you're ready, I'd like to try another Father's Day dinner. A fresh start, with everyone knowing the truth. We'll see, I replied, unwilling to commit too quickly. One lunch doesn't erase years of history. No, he agreed, but it's a start. As I watched him drive away in his sensible Buick rather than the luxury Mercedes I had briefly provided, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, hope tempered by caution, the possibility of healing shadowed by the memory of harm. But predominant among these feelings was a sense of my own strength, the knowledge that I had finally spoken my truth and been heard. Whatever came next, I would face it as an equal, not as the perpetual disappointment seeking approval that never came. And that realization alone marked a profound transformation in our family's story. 3 months after the Father's Day confrontation, I hosted the family at my home for the first time. The modern glass and steel structure overlooking the Charles River reflected my aesthetic completely, a far cry from the traditional colonial where I'd grown up. Floor-to-ceiling windows allowed natural light to flood the open-concept living space, while integrated smart home technology controlled everything from lighting to security, with voice commands or the tap of a screen. This place is incredible, Tyler whispered, as I gave him a private tour before the others arrived. It's like living in the future. That was the idea. I smiled, genuinely pleased by his appreciation. My mother arrived next, bearing homemade desserts, despite my assurance that catering had been arranged. Some habits persisted through family transformations. She paused in the entryway, taking in the space with wide eyes. Samuel, it's beautiful, she said, reaching for my hand. So different from anything I would choose, but so perfectly you. Her acknowledgement of my distinct taste, without attempting to reshape it to her preferences, marked one of many small changes in our interactions over recent months. Jackson and his wife arrived with their children, who immediately became fascinated with the home automation system, asking to turn lights on and off repeatedly. Amanda came with a different boyfriend than the judge who had attended the disastrous Father's Day dinner, a sign that perhaps she too was reconsidering what relationships should look like. My father arrived last, carrying a bottle of expensive whiskey and a small wrapped package. His appearance had changed subtly in the months since our confrontation. He'd lost weight, and a new pair of modern glasses replaced the conservative frames he'd worn for decades. Most notably, the permanent tension in his shoulders had eased, giving him a more relaxed posture despite the obvious nervousness of this first visit to my home. This is quite a place, he said, extending the whiskey and package. Thank you for hosting everyone. The formal thanks, once so rare, had become more frequent in our interactions, part of his conscious effort to acknowledge my place in the family. Jessica emerged from the kitchen where she'd been arranging appetizers, greeting each family member warmly before taking her place beside me. Her presence provided an anchor of normalcy amidst the still-evolving family dynamics. Dinner proved more relaxed than any family gathering in recent memory. We sat around my custom dining table, enjoying catered gourmet cuisine while conversation flowed surprisingly easily. The traditional sibling hierarchy had flattened somewhat, each of us speaking and being heard in turn without my father's former habit of directing attention towards certain achievements while dismissing others. "I have an announcement," my father said as dessert was served. "Samuel and I have formed a business partnership combining Caldwell Construction with elements of his security technology." The siblings exchanged surprised glances while my mother smiled knowingly. She and my father had begun their own healing process, with greater honesty between them about finances and emotions. "Smart buildings integration," I elaborated. "Incorporating advanced security and automation systems directly into new construction projects. The first development breaks ground next month," my father added. "A residential complex in Cambridge, with Samuel's technology built into its foundation." "That's unexpected," Jackson commented, looking between us with newfound respect for the partnership. "A lot has changed," my father acknowledged, meeting my gaze across the table with genuine warmth. "For the better." Later, as the family gathered in the living room for after-dinner drinks, my father pulled me aside, holding the small wrapped package he'd brought. "I wanted to give you this privately," he said, pressing it into my hand. I unwrapped it carefully to find a wooden box containing a pocket watch. Not a new one, but clearly antique, showing signs of careful maintenance despite its age. "This was my father's," my father explained quietly. "His father gave it to him when he completed his apprenticeship as a machinist. He gave it to me when I started my business." The significance wasn't lost on me. This family heirloom represented legitimacy, acknowledgement of achievement in a tangible form. "I should have given it to you when you founded your company," he continued. "It was wrong of me to withhold recognition because your path didn't match my expectations." I turned the watch over, noting the inscription on the back. "To Samuel, who built success on his own terms. With pride, Dad." "Thank you," I said simply, the words inadequate for the emotion behind them. "Our weekly sessions with Dr. Marshall have been eye-opening," he admitted, referring to the family therapist we had been seeing as part of our agreement. She pointed out how my rigid definitions of success were really about control and fear of change. They were, I agreed, but I understand better now where that came from. The therapy sessions had revealed generations of Caldwell men defining their worth through narrowly prescribed achievements, each father imposing expectations that reflected their own insecurities and limited perspectives. Understanding this pattern didn't excuse the harm, but it provided context that helped me view my father with greater compassion. "I'm trying to break the cycle," my father said, as though reading my thoughts. "For you, for Jackson's kids, for all of us." "We both are," I replied. As the evening progressed, I observed the subtle shifts in our family dynamics. My mother spoke up more frequently, offering opinions rather than just support. My siblings engaged with me as an equal rather than the family oddity. My father listened more than he talked, a revolutionary change from his former domination of every conversation. None of it was perfect. Old patterns occasionally resurfaced, quickly corrected with meaningful glances or gentle redirections. The work of reshaping family relationships after decades of dysfunction required ongoing effort from everyone involved. When the guests departed, Jessica and I stood in the doorway, waving goodbye as car headlights disappeared down the driveway. The September air carried the first hint of autumn crispness, a fitting metaphor for the season of change our family was experiencing. "You look different," Jessica observed, closing the door and leaning against it. "Different how?" "Lighter." She decided after a moment's consideration. "Like you've set down something heavy you've been carrying for years." Her observation resonated with my own internal experience. The constant pursuit of paternal approval had indeed been a weight I hadn't fully recognized until it was removed. "I realized something important these past few months," I told her, as we cleared the last dishes from the dining table. "My worth was never dependent on his recognition of it." "That's a powerful realization," she nodded. "It's funny," I continued. "I spent years building a successful company partly to prove him wrong, to force him to see my value on my terms. But when I finally reached the point of not needing his validation anymore, that's when our relationship began to heal." In the months following the Father's Day confrontation, I had channeled my experience into something constructive beyond just my family healing. I established a mentoring program for young tech entrepreneurs from non-traditional backgrounds, those whose paths might not receive support from conventional sources. The program provided not just funding but emotional encouragement, affirming the validity of unconventional routes to success. Watching these young innovators flourish with proper support gave me a satisfaction deeper than any business achievement. My father, to his credit, had embraced his own journey of growth. Beyond our business partnership and therapy sessions, he had begun speaking differently about success to his grandchildren and younger employees, emphasizing authenticity and personal fulfillment over rigid definitions of achievement. As Jessica and I settled on the balcony overlooking the city lights, I reflected on the profound life lessons emerging from our family's transformation. "I've learned that standing up for yourself doesn't always mean burning bridges," I told her, putting words to thoughts that had been forming for months. "Sometimes it means establishing boundaries that actually allow for healthier connections." "And?" she prompted, sensing there was more. "And that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or excusing harm," I continued. "It's possible to hold someone accountable while still opening a path towards something new. That's wisdom hard-earned," Jessica acknowledged, squeezing my hand. The journey of healing with my family remained incomplete, as such journeys always are. Old wounds sometimes reopened in unexpected moments. Trust, once broken, rebuilt itself slowly through consistent actions rather than dramatic gestures. But something fundamental had shifted, both within me and within our family system. The cycle of conditional love and narrow definitions of worth had been interrupted. Whatever relationship evolved between my father and me going forward would be based on mutual respect rather than domination and submission. And perhaps most importantly, I had discovered my own capacity for resilience, for standing firmly in my truth while remaining open to genuine change in others. That discovery represented a form of success no balance sheet or business valuation could capture, yet it felt more substantial than any achievement that had come before. As I looked out over the city I'd made my home, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me throughout years of external accomplishment. The true measure of success, I had learned, lay not in proving others wrong, but in living authentically according to your own values, not in accumulating wealth or status, but in creating connections based on genuine acceptance rather than conditional approval. "What are you thinking about?" Jessica asked, noticing my contemplative silence. "Just that sometimes the most valuable things we build aren't companies or buildings," I replied. "Sometimes they're the boundaries that protect us and the bridges that connect us to others on healthy terms." She nodded, understanding as she always did. "Have you ever had to stand up to someone who consistently undervalued you? What happened when you finally drew that line in the sand?" Drop a comment below and share your experience. This journey has taught me that many of us struggle with similar family dynamics, and there's power in sharing these stories. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more real-life experiences, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by others' limited perceptions. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, true success means defining achievement on your own terms, not someone else's.